The Incredibles was one of the greatest Pixar movies of all time, as well as one of those movies we all grew up watching. After making animated movies based on toys, bugs, fish, and even monsters, Pixar finally decided to make their first film featuring a full cast of humans. One of the things that impressed me the most about this movie is the animation and how it looks. And for an animated movie released in 2004, the quality is surprisingly amazing. It also has a unique spin on the superhero genre. Rather than trying to picture these heroes as godlike beings who are facing extreme crises, the Incredibles are a slightly dysfunctional family who are forced to live their civilian lives due to a government ban issued on superheroes. The family faces problems that aren't extraordinary, like a son who's getting into trouble constantly because he wants to prove his mom and dad that he can partake in sports and still be a regular kid, a father who's stuck in a 9-to-5 dead-end job, a socially awkward daughter trying to get a date, and a stay-at-home mom looking after the youngest. Since the main theme and dynamic of the movie is about family, the subplots that each of these characters face don't feel forced or drag the movie down because they strongly develop the characters. The characters are also likable, not just because of their different and enjoyable personalities, but because they easily make the audience relate with them and empathize with their struggles. Another interesting character that comes to my mind is the main villain, Syndrome. His backstory makes him more focused on his mission to eliminate supers. While I do understand that this movie is mostly catered to kids, I still found it enjoyable and fun to laugh at. The comedy is written well, it doesn't sound forced, and it seamlessly flows into the movie even in a dramatic scene. Another thing that I really loved about this movie was the amazing soundtrack. The movie's score was made by Michael Giacchino. I really enjoyed listening to the soundtrack as I was watching the movie. But I have to say, the best thing about this movie is that we get the thickest character in the entire universe, Mr. fucking Incredible. My god, I can't believe Pixar made the most thickest ass in the entire universe.
Oh yeah. Damn, boy. Damn, boy, he's thick, boy. That's a thick ass boy. Damn.
Also, a lot of people really love Elastigirl, and yeah, I guess it makes sense she's second to Mr. Incredible. Now that I think about it, she really does deserve it because, my god, she's got a curvy physique and she's so hot. The first Incredibles was a fantastic movie. It's got great humor, likable characters, the animation still holds up to this day, exciting action sequences, an amazing score, and a great villain. The movie's ending was also pretty good, and I was hoping to see how it would build up to the next movie. But we didn't hear anything since after 2004. There was no sequel for almost 14 years. But anyway, I finally got to see The Incredibles 2 with my family on June the 18th. My initial reaction was, oh my god, this is a fantastic movie. However, I started to gather everything together and understand that things don't make sense in the movie and some parts of it weren't as great as the first movie did. And I finally made up my mind. The first Incredibles movie is better than The Incredibles 2 in almost every way. But before we get into the pros and cons, let's just summarize the entire story. The sequel takes place right where the movie left off. Although the Incredibles tried to battle against the Underminer, they failed to catch him, and the government still recognizes their attempt as illegal behavior. This got them to finally shut down the superheroes' relocation program, and they forced the superheroes to remain in their civilian alter egos permanently. While it did seem like the powers are in jeopardy, a helping hand from DevTech owners Winston and Evelyn Dever puts Helen back in action as Elastigirl, but Bob has to be the stay-at-home parent this time. The family moves into a new home gifted by Winston, and Helen sets off on a journey to make superhero activity legal again. However, a new villain by the name of Screenslaver tries to prevent the lifting of the ban, and Elastigirl must try to solve the mystery of his motivations to prevent an attack on Metroville. The movie ends with the family enjoying yet another normal day together, until they spot a police chase of a bank robber and they decide to suit up once again. Hopefully that's not how Incredibles 3 begins. It doesn't really look that different compared to the first movie, but there are some noticeable changes like new shaders and extra details. For one thing, most of the characters do look less pale than the first movie did. Jack looks more like a human baby, and finally, you can see Dash's freckles. Michael Giacchino returns to make a fantastic score for this movie. Even listening to some of the soundtrack that's online makes me reminisce of the movie. I guess the greatest part of the soundtrack was the trumpet moments, which most of the soundtrack was composed of. The action scenes also felt really exciting and fun to watch, just like the first movie. And while I personally don't like the character Jack, there was a really interesting brawl he had with a raccoon that was so persistent to steal some trash from their bin. Just like the first movie, there's some great character development here. You get to see some of Jack's new powers. Helen as Elastigirl is the main hero and has pretty much the badassery of Batman. And my man, Frozone, he's got so much more character development than in the first movie.
Honey!
What?
Where's my super suit?
What?
Where is my super suit?
Now, this isn't really a negative of this movie, but I'm really disappointed that Frozone still doesn't have his own movie. Moving on. Most of the movie still explores this family dynamic as seen in the first movie. We get to see how Bob tries to raise the family alone, Violet trying to move on after her boyfriend's memory was accidentally erased by the NSA, and Dash struggling to solve his math homework by requesting his dad for help. There are some new characters that are actually quite interesting. Some of the heroes that I actually liked are Void, who has the ability to create portals, Crush Hour, who's got telekinesis, and Helectrix, who manipulates electricity. The new heroes are not only interesting because of their unique powers, but they also have really fresh costume designs. Finally, there's still some great comedic moments to enjoy, even for a kids movie. However, there were some moments which weren't really funny. Most of the jokes aren't even jokes, it's mostly just shifting the camera at Jack to get a shot at him acting randomly or cute for laughs, or the scenes where Dash is running around with a remote pressing every button on it. As I said earlier, Dash wanted to be obnoxious because he couldn't try to participate in sports. But in this movie, he's got nothing left to do. He's already got everything he wants, so he's just an obnoxious kid for the sake of being an obnoxious kid. Another part of this movie that was very problematic was the movie's villain. Screenslaver was predictable as hell. As soon as I got to see the first appearance, she was all like, I want to stop superheroes so they can't be illegal again. Her backstory is that her dad used to be very close in contact with all these superheroes. One day he was being robbed and he tried to call all the superheroes on landline, but no one picked up the phone and he got killed when he was given no form of protection. Screenslaver, can you really blame them though? Can you really blame superheroes for being banned by the government? Another thing that was predictable about the villain was he tried to send a decoy, and Elastigirl even knew that this was too easy. And I kinda guessed that Evelyn would turn out to be the real Screenslaver. I didn't notice that immediately, but it somewhat occurred to me before the big reveal. Another dumb villain motive that I found from Screenslaver is during this scene where all the ambassadors and superheroes are boarding a cruise together. The ambassadors sign the papers to legislate superhero activity once again, and then Screenslaver does the dumbest thing by doing her plan immediately after they sign the papers. She starts controlling all the superheroes and trying to make them look like they're the bad guys so they can't legislate them again. Why couldn't she do this before they signed the papers? That would have been a better time to commit her plan. Like how it would have gone is when they are about to sign the papers, the superheroes would be under Screenslaver's control, but this time in proper timing. The rest of the superheroes didn't seem all that interesting because they had the same powers as the Incredibles, or that there's some powers that nobody really asked for. The heroes that I didn't find the most enjoyable are Screech, who's basically a human owl, Brick, a buff woman with super strength. Now correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't we already see a strong superhero? I don't know, he had strength. Oh wait, I think I know why they introduced Brick, because they wanted to show a strong female superhero. And finally we have this guy called Reflux, who, I kid you not, just pukes lava. I do know that some people like him, I guess it's because of the comedy, but personally I don't really remember anything funny about him. Finally, the most disappointing thing about this movie is that our ultimate waifu, Mr. Incredible, is not the thickest boy anymore, because we don't get to see him in his costume that much, and he's not thick anymore, he's swole. So I guess you could say he's Bob Swole. However, we do get to see more of Elastigirl, and my god, Elastigirl has a new suit that makes her look extremely thick.
Yeah, boy.
To finally conclude, I rate The Incredibles 2 as meh. It's basically 50-50 because there was not much that was really exciting or extraordinary about it. But that's not necessarily to say that it was a terrible movie. Sure, it had some good comedy, but its new villain was predictable and the plot wasn't all too interesting. I did love the character development, which still continued in this movie, and the music score still stood strong. Despite all the good and bad I pointed out, I still enjoyed this movie and I would recommend everyone to watch it. If you've enjoyed the first movie, Incredibles 2 may not be as great as the first movie, but you'll still have a good time watching it.